All right, what we're working with today is being able to write equations from application problems. This is really going to be helpful when we start getting into systems of equations, but for right now, we're just going to do basic equations. So there's some things that we need to know. Some words for addition are sum, increase, greater than. Okay, whenever you see the word sum, I want you to write a parentheses, and this is also a word that has and. There's 4 or 5 words that you use the word and. Otherwise, if you use the word and somewhere else, you don't know what operation is. And is where the plus sign goes. And so sum has to have parentheses. If you don't write parentheses, sometimes it'll be right and sometimes it won't. So whenever you see the word sum, if you write parentheses, then you should be in good shape. Okay, let me switch colors for difference or subtraction. So subtraction, the first word is difference. And this is the other one that I want you to use parentheses for. And this is the word and. Okay, another one is decrease. Lost my mouse. The other one is decrease. And less than. Less than is probably the most trickiest one there, because this has to be backwards. Greater than would be backwards too, but adding backwards doesn't matter. But if you subtract backwards, that makes a difference. So whenever you see less than, it has to be backwards. So if it says 6 less than 12, it's 6 less than 12. It goes backwards. Okay. All right, let's switch colors once again. So multiplication, the first word for multiplication is product. And product is another and word. And we don't need parentheses for product. Another product word is of. A lot of times this is when you're dealing with percents. Percents of a problem tells you to multiply. And then the last word we have is division. And division is quotient. This is another and word. And ratio. This is another and word. Okay, so the ones that use the word and are the ones that say it here. So sum, make sure you have parentheses. Difference, make sure you have parentheses. Product has an and. Quotient has an and. Oops. Quotient has an and. Aren't you writing? And ratio has an and. And then the big one to remember again is this less than. Less than is backwards. Okay? All right, so let's do a couple examples. Let's start down here. For number 1, it says 6 less than. Whenever I see less than, I write minus 6. Twice, we didn't talk about that, but let's add that up here. Twice is 2 times. It's very specific. It's 2 times. So 6 less than twice a number. So a number is n or x. When you see the word is, I didn't write that either. Is an equal. And so is the number. Well, we already said the number was n, so I'm going to say n increased by 5. So it's 6 less than 2 times the number is the same as n plus 5. And then now we're going to solve it. So I'm going to subtract n on both sides. And so I get n minus 6 is 5. And then if I add 6 to both sides, I get n is 11. So once you do it, now you have to solve it. All right, I'm going to switch colors so the red's not overpowering every problem. So for the next one, it says 3 times the sum. Sum, I want you to put parentheses. So it's the sum. And the actual plus sign goes where the word and is. Because remember I said sum's one of those. So it's a number. This time I'm going to use x. And 4 is the same as, that's a big equal sign, 18. If you don't write parentheses for this one, you will not distribute, and this problem requires distributing. And so what I get for this problem is I get 3x plus 12 equals 18. I minus 12 on both sides, and I get 3x is 6. So I divide by 3, and x is 2. All right, last one. Let's change colors one more time. Oops, let's go black. So again, the sum of a number and 6, so sum is plus. It goes where the and sign is. So the sum of a number and 6 divided by. When I say divide by here, I don't want to do this. We're not doing this anymore. I want to do a fraction because it makes more sense for you because we've been doing so many of those. Is 7. And so now I multiply both sides by 5. So I get n plus 6 is equal to 35. And I minus 6 on both sides, and I get n is 29. Okay, so those are the first type of problems we have, and that's when we have to write an equation from a verbal statement and then solve. The next type of problems we have are problems dealing with rate of change. Rate of change tend to be per problems. So if you see the word per, okay, this is usually the per. Sometimes it'll be change over time, but a lot of times it's going to be the per. This is where you start the base cost. So for number 4, a car rental company charges 25 cents per mile, so 25 cents per mile, and 25 cents per day. Now, I know that this has another per, but this per is just saying that regardless of if I drive anywhere, I'm going to pay $25. This is my base. And so my total equals that. Okay, so sometimes you're going to have two pers, but you have to realize which is the per that's going to be changing. We're only riding the car for one day. And so since we're writing it for one day, that's why I just add the 25 and that's my base. Okay, the next type of problems, these can be confusing. And so I've got a method that tends to help people. So hopefully you can follow along and understand what's going on. Oops. Crazy mouse. The first thing we need to know is we just need to know what a consecutive integer is. Well, consecutive integers are numbers that follow after each other. So like 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Consecutive odd would be 11, 13, 15, 17. It's odd numbers that keep going. And then consecutive even could be 20, 22, 24, and so forth. These are even. So consecutive is one right after the other. Okay, when I want to find consecutive numbers, I always start with my first number being n. And my second number, well, I look at this. How far away is 3 from 2? What do I have to add to get to 3? Well, I start with n and I have to add 1. Insert some more space. Okay, and so now for my next integer, if I had a third integer, to get to my third integer, I would have to add 2. To get to my fourth integer, I'd have to add 3. So if you notice, it keeps increasing by 1. Now, most of these problems are sum problems, and so I would add these up and set them equal to the sum. For consecutive odd and even, it's the same idea. My first is n. Now let's see what I have to do to find my second integer. Well, to get from 11 to 13, I would add 2. So it'll be n plus 2. To get to my third integer right here, I had to add 11 plus 4. And to get to my fourth one, I had to add 6. and it equals the sum. So even though these are odd, my odd numbers are still 2 digits apart, so that's why I increase by 2's. The evens, it's the exact same idea. I start with n, and my second digit is n. To get from 20 to 22, I add 2. To get to my third one, I had to add 4. And however many integers, you equal it to the sum. So consecutive integers, it's 1, 2, 3. Odd and even, it's 2, 4, 6. All right, let's look at two problems. So for number 5, it says consecutive integers, 3 of them, that add up to 54. Okay, so yeah. So I have my first integer, my second integer, and my third integer. Well, my first integer is n. It's consecutive. So my second one is n plus 1. My third one is n plus 2. And these, 1n plus 1n plus 1n is 3n. 1 plus 2 is 3. These are supposed to equal 54. And so I minus 3 on both sides, and I get 3n is 51. And then I divide by 3, and I get 17. So what I found is that my first number, my mouse, is 17. Well, my second number is 17 plus 1, which is 18. And my third number is 17 plus 2, which is 19. So these are the 3 numbers that I can add up, and they give me a sum of 54. All right, same idea for this one. This time it's even. So that means I'm not going up by 1, I'm going to go up by 2. So my first one is n. My second one is n plus 2, because even digits are 2 away. My third number is n plus 4. And my fourth number is n plus 6. Those are supposed to give me a sum of negative 100. So that's 4n plus 12. So I minus 12 on both sides, and I get a negative 112. And I divide by 4, and I get a negative 28. Well, that's my first number. That's this number. To find the second one, it's negative 28 plus 2, which is negative 26. Negative 28 plus 4, which is negative 24. And negative 28 plus 6, which is negative 22. And those are my 4 consecutive integers that have a sum of negative 100.